Hello, I'm Ferris. I'll be your presenter. The use of banks versus the use of credit unions. Which one is the better deal? This is a research proposal for Business Maths Research Methods 1, BADM 498 at the University of the Bahamas. Let's go about research outline. We'll introduce the researcher and the research, discuss the research objectives, define the variables, analyze the literature for the variables, look at the hypothesis development, proposed measures, methodology, and limitations. The researcher, Ferris Jameson Grant. I'm an accounting major at the University of Bahamas. This is my senior year. I have aims to be an accountant and bring some contribution to the accounting and financial field in the country of the Bahamas. I'm a 13-year veteran in the Royal Bahamas Police Force and a father of twin boys. The research is banks versus credit unions. This research covers the definitions, differences, and the comparisons of both banks and credit unions within the Bahamas. The comparative analysis based on international and local research. Now, the international research has already been done, and we now model it to perform locally because there was no local research to be found. We use primary and secondary data to discover the business structure and offerings of both banks and credit unions, business objectives, and the legal distinctions. Will there be a comparative analysis based on customer value? So there's a comparative analysis based on the primary data of the companies, and then a comparative analysis based on the views of customers, which will be done in the form of a survey. The study aims to edify, clarify, and to add to the research already done. Research objectives. A problem statement. Banks and credit unions have been two staples of the financial institution sector, providing numerous primary and intermediary services. Both institution types offer very similar services with fluctuating nuances and contrasting cultures. Although larger banks may be presumed to provide a better advantage for the average individual, this large scale of operation may come at a greater cost for customers. The question rises, which of the two institutions enables an individual to be more economically viable and versatile? Now, like we say, there's a presumption that the bigger company can have the most benefits or the better benefits, but that is not always the case, especially when it comes to transporting costs between what the company sees and what the customer gets. The general objective is to determine which financial institution provides more economic value to the aggregate population, and we're going to go on which has the most value for the general public. The specific objective is to emphasize contextual differences between institution type and respective advantages or disadvantages, and evaluate consumer preference, whether in practice or theory, using primary research. Let's look at a few of the dependent variables. Household financial sentiment. This is the aggregate index of consumer sentiment computed using data based on survey questions. Consumer expectations. This is the aggregate index of consumer expectation based on survey questions. Finances versus 1 year ago. This is the benchmarking respondents' perception of financial health over a year ago. Financial expected 1 year ahead. This is benchmarking the respondents' expectation 1 year ahead. National conditions over the next 5 years. Benchmarking respondents' perception of the outlook of financial health nationally within the next year. And national conditions over the next 5 years, same as before, but in the next 5 years. The reason for the differentiation is because my household sentiment may be positive, but my national outlook may be negative. And this can be attributed to discipline or lack thereof for the individual. And then when it comes to the national outlook, that's the perception on how banks and economies and other people are doing as relates to education, the fragility of the payment dollar, or how well the other factors can be involved. Other dependent variables. These are self-explanatory, and these variables are very important when it comes to the primary research as relates to questionnaires. This speaks on quantity of the loan, interest payable on the loan, collateral security for the loan, repayment period of the loan, procedural formalities, documentation, sanction time, communication, e-services, and social media presence. And we focus more on loans because loans is the number one way these financial institutions make their money. And it's the number one reason we go to these institutions. Yes, we save our money there, but for the most part, we develop credit and we try to gain our most substantial assets using these either banks or credit unions, whether it's a mortgage, an auto loan, student loan, whatever, what have you. More research objectives, the independent variables, and these are straightforward. Demographics, at least the demographics are straightforward. Then we go into the small bank share. Now this is the proportion of credit union branches to total institutions branches in the country. Okay, now we have the large bank share, which is the portion of bank branches to total institution branches in the country. Then now we have the small bank access, which is the ratio of small bank branches to the total population in the country of the household, and the ratio of bank branches to the total population in the country of the household. So now we have the share, which is how many banks in total, combining the two, and how many credit unions in total banking the two. Then we have the ratios now to say what is the access. And another thing we look on when we discuss in this topic is not only access as relates to number of banks, but access as relates to geographic location. Now we're in an archipelago, so therefore there are not credit unions on every island. As a matter of fact, there may be only one bank on every island. So that's something very important that we need to discover and need to investigate. Of course, moderating value variables, including foreign ownership, which is the proportion of banks that are foreign owned, and then management quality, which is the overhead cost ratio of institutions in the country. And we will show how those variables impact the comparative research as relates to the data and the quality of the financial institutions. Literature review. This is just the literature regarding the variables and of course the general research. Of course, when it comes to the household financial sentiment, consumer expectations, finances, national conditions, all those came from an article by Ferris and Women, 2020. They use I think they use the Michigan University as their model for the surveys, and we will follow that model. Then of course, back to now the sentiment of the perception of the customers using quantity of loan, interest payable on loan, collateral security, repayment, procedural formalities, and documentation. And we spoke about why we are targeting borrowers and loans as it relates to the perspectives of the consumers. Continuing, sanction time, communication that goes along with the loans. And then of course there's the additional e-services, social media presence, which is self-explanatory, and that can help with the marketing and the level of communication that the consumer may feel. Back to small bank, large bank share, small bank access, large bank access. We spoke about that I think very efficiently already. Now let's look at our hypothesis development. Now back to the credit union and bank market share, which also includes the access. And that can be very advantageous, especially in our archipelago. We discussed that. And now the profitability. Now this is stuff that we can find from the financial statements, including balance sheets and income statements, where you determine how a bank or a credit union is profitable. And we explain how profitability can make a customer feel comfortable, even if to their knowledge or not, because they may see it in less rates in loans, less for charges, less services for doing simple things, like depositing money, withdrawing money. Of course, moderating variables, management quality, and foreign local ownership. You can see how that affects both negatively and positively the credit union and the bank market share. Now, the aggregate customer satisfaction, that is the sentiment or the perspective of the consumers, and they will be based on the reliability, communication, and the service value of the bank or credit union. And the different questions, we can slot them into these three main groups. Now, the profitability, the aggregate customer satisfaction, and the credit union, bank, and bank market shares and access will bring us to our optimal institution. Proposed hypothesis. Hypothesis 1. Proposed hypothesis. Credit unions provide better utility advantage for the average consumer. Hypothesis 2. The institution of choice depends greatly on finance requirements and goals. And that will be answered based on the financials that we look at. You can see which demographics benefit from which services, for how long, and to which end. Proposed measures. We spoke about these variables, and these are the measures to, these are the literature specifically relating to those. All right, using the formula, right? Use the formula to like we spoke earlier, use the formula for variables 1 and 2 to benchmark the expectation and the sentiment for the consumers. All right, now using a 5-point scale, variables 3 to 6, you use a 5-point scale to speak on how they feel about the conditions over the next 5 years, how they feel about their own expectations, how they're doing, how they feel about it. And then we're going to use the 5-point scale again for the variables 7 through what's that? 7 through 22. Correction, 7 through 14. In the survey, we'll have questions developed by Tom Z 2021 as relates to e-services and the social media aspect of the banks and the credit unions as relates to their social media presence, their online services. That can be a deal breaker for some. That can be a very important to others, especially being on an archipelago. And of course, the small bank share, their accesses, large bank access, foreign ownership, and management quality that can be calculated just by getting the information, should be easily accessed. Methodology. Primary comparative research of all banks and credit unions. Like we said earlier, that should be an easy access, that should be something easily accessible. Digital delivery of personalized questionnaires to working individuals in varying sectors and industries. Now, the judgment selection would be only based on if the individual is working or have used credit unions or banks and foresee to use credit unions and banks in the near future. That is the only criteria one must have. We're not going to go asking persons who don't have a dollar saved about their sentiment or their expectation. They may have a very reasonable outlook, but if you don't intend to have credit or use credit, maybe not old enough yet to have established any, we wouldn't be wasting our time asking those persons. Data analysis, when necessary, use correlation, ANOVA, and regression. Limitations of the research. Financial knowledge of the respondents. That one is clear-cut. We wouldn't want to overburden or overconfuse anyone. So that may be a limit to trying to ascertain the information we need. Insufficient sample size for statistical measurement. Our aim is 200 respondents, but that may be a little too little, or may not be diverse enough. lack of previous research studies on the topic, especially in the Bahamas, limited access to data, time constraints, conflicts arising from cultural bias and other personal issues, implementation of data collection methods, and this is of course a proposal, and any critique or other assistance would be appreciated, and of course the scope of discussions. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed.